Hey, a big warm hello to everyone. Totally out here now. Homophobia, transphobia, biphobia. Three big words, but real life for millions. Many of us who are not accepted by our families, our friends, society, live in constant fear because of our sexual orientation and identity. Did you know that from 1948 to 1990, the World Health Organization had classified homosexuality as a mental illness? It was on May 17th, 1990, 30 years ago. The WHO made a decision to declassify homosexuality as a mental disorder. Today, on the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, we have with us Shobhaa Day, called the Jackie Collins of India. She's a novelist, columnist. I know we'll talk about that. He's a novelist,
Take it back,
columnist.
take it back
Taking it back, we have with us Shobhaa
immediately.
Day. We have Shobhaa Day, who is a
That's it.
novelist,
Thank you.
columnist. So many achievements, Shobhaa Day. Mostly one amazing torchbearer for many causes. I must say that. When I was curating this conversation, you were the first person who came to my mind, and I reached out to you, and I remember how very quickly you agreed to this talk. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Please join me, everyone, in welcoming our very, very, very own and special Shobhaa Day. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Looking
And
forward to our conversation.
how is the lockdown treating you?
As you can see, I think it's treating me quite well because I've decided not to let the lockdown lock me up in any way at all. I mean, at the end of the day, our minds are our own, our imagination is our own, and nothing can lock any of that down. So I'm
Totally
doing fine.
wonderful. And your videos, we love those videos. I look
Thank
forward to
you.
them every day.
Thank you.
So, so we'll just get straight onto it,
Yeah,
Shobha.
yeah, let's please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let us start by talking about
Yes.
homophobia. Yeah, and I Googled, just as I was curating this. I Googled what is homophobia, and
Yes.
what came up for me was dislike of or prejudice against homosexual people. And I
Yes.
thought to myself, is that all homophobia is? Is
Yes.
homophobia when people yell, spit at you on the street, kick you physically, like they did to me 18 years
Yes.
ago, like I
Yes.
said? Or is it when people ghost you, when they hear your story? When my story came out in Humans of Bombay, some of them just disappeared from my life, and that's okay. Or is
Yeah.
it when when I went for school admissions for my kids with my same
Yeah.
sex
Yes.
partner, I was informed it is mandatory to have my husband's or my father's name.
Yes.
So I don't understand homophobia really, even after so many years. So what is homophobia? What does it mean to you?
Well, before I answer that, because this is going to be a conversation that's going to deal with not just the interpretation of that word, but I would like to discuss how it has impacted your life because that's a very powerful story. I mean, homophobia to me suggests a kind of closed mindedness where people don't want to be accepting of anything that is unfamiliar to them. uh,
Yeah.
it, it stems from ignorance more than anything else. And it's going to take a while for society to have a largeness of everything for themselves, not because it's something that is hurtful to a large segment of our society, but I feel it just shows up their own narrow mindedness if they cannot overcome whatever this fear and anxiety that someone else's sexuality arouses in them. So, to me, it's really about insecurity in another human being. But I wanted to ask you more importantly because I was extremely uh, shaken up when I saw a video of yours where you talked about a knife attack that your own mother thought of perhaps killing you and was standing over you with a knife glinting menacingly, and she also told you how she felt about it. I mean, that is homophobia in the extreme, and you've lived it. So I think if we talk about you, it just makes it that much more real and easier to connect.
Sure, but that was about 18 years ago, and I was brought up a Catholic,
Yeah.
a Mangalorean Catholic, in a very strict traditional manner where anything that you do outside of your religion is sinful. So, and my mother was brought up like that as well.
Has
And
she
to know,
changed? The important question is 18 years later. Have you made your peace with her? Has she accepted you and your partner?
So that was the beauty of it. She's no more, she
Yes,
passed away 6 years ago. But the beauty of it and the magic of it is that my
yes,
mother, while she was so not accepting of us 18
yes,
years ago, she
yeah,
was very accepting. By the time, and she transformed. She
yes,
saw us and she saw love is love. We
yes,
have young kids. They're now 22. They were
yes,
young when Nicola came into our lives, and she saw how we brought up the kids, and
yes.
she realized that that is fine. That she was living in this false belief.
Did she ever talk about it? Did you both ever discuss it? Or did Nicola, you and your mother, have a very candid conversation about
You
that? Because, if I'm just thinking, it is a very extreme response to take to no matter whether you're Catholic or Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim, for any mother to take an extreme position like, attacking her daughter with a knife because she disapproved of her sexual preference.
Yeah, I mean, my mother is not around to ever ask her, but
Did you ever ask her? Was my question.
we never had the question that conversation. But what happened is, I think it is to do a lot of how we are brought up in Indian society. We don't talk about these things. At least in our family, we didn't speak about it. She acted in a manner later that made it feel like she approved of my choices. So she
But it was
accepted us.
never, that was never actually spoken about.
Never. We never
And
spoke
what
about it.
what since she did in that conversation, in your video, what you narrate, you talked about her referring to your husband as well. So is he
Yeah.
alive today? Is he not alive? Is he accepting? Is he disapproving? What is it? I mean, what is the homophobia index as far as he's concerned? He's the father of your twins.
So the interesting part is we made peace with it. So he was the one who actually supported us, Nicola and I, through our journey. He said, "That's fine. Let the world do whatever they want to do. I will support you." But that took a long time, Shobha. It didn't happen overnight. It
No,
took about eight to
how
ten
did it
years.
happen? How did the
So,
transition take place? Was it
so
because of the children, or
yes.
because he himself had a totally different, by then he had changed his own attitude? Or was it
So
just a peacemaking thing that I have kids with her, so let me change my attitude?
I think nothing happens overnight anyway. It takes a lot of
Yes,
time. So with us also, because we had children, we had history. Initially, it was about just being together, making peace with it. Over time, I think it was about understanding that it's okay. The ex-wife is not going to, nobody's questioning your manhood, because a lot of people questioned his manhood. They said, "Oh, you're not man enough." I remember that conversation with him, and over time
yes.
that changed for him, Shobha. And when he made peace with that, he made peace with us.
How, where is he right now in this whole equation? Does he feature in your life
So,
on a day-to-day basis?
ab-
Lives of your children, for
abs-
example?
absolutely. I tell my children they have won a lottery because they have two mothers and they have a father. So we bring them up together. We have brought them up together.
Yes.
There is harmony, there is peace. We celebrate birthdays together. We celebrate special occasions together. So there is, there's history. And I believe when you have shared history, you have to accept that, whether you're from, in a same sex relationship or you're not. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of maturity.
Yes, but you also in the video you mentioned that your young son, who's now 22, asked you how you would feel if he were to turn around and tell you that he prefers to be with the same-sex partner, and your own responses were kind of puzzling, considering you have lived your truth, and it took you a while to accept what your son was saying to you. How come?
See, for me, there are two responses to this. One is that yes, I would support him fully. That's the first thing I said to him. If he were to ever have a same-sex partner, I said to him, absolutely full cooperation from me, from his other mother, and his dad. However, because of the challenges I have faced and the challenges I face on a day-to-day basis, I said to him, I wish it wasn't the truth for you, because it is a hard world out there. There's a lot of discrimination, but I would support him.
But what would you say to people who may not have your courage or the support that you finally did get from your partner? I'm assuming from the partner's family, your ex-husband, from your mother before she passed. You haven't mentioned your father. Was he alive when he discovered the truth? Whatever you wanted to uh, reveal about yourself.
My father passed away when I was 6 years old, Shobha.
Right.
So he hasn't really
He
featured in our
doesn't
life.
feature. Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't
So
hasn't really
yeah.
featured.
So today's generation, your son's generation, your daughter's generation, what would you say to them that you're saying it's still very tough for you?
Yeah,
Do you think it's going to be easier for them?
it's interesting because I we discuss this a lot amongst my 22-year-olds. I have twins who are 22,
Yeah.
and my daughter, in fact, she has a friend who is very out and he's very gay. And I said to her, "Oh, has it come out? He's in New Zealand." And she
Yeah.
said to me, "What is this talk about coming out?" She
Yes.
said, "Your generation needs to come out. Our
Yes.
generation is very accepting. We
Yes.
don't even think of him as different. That's
Yeah.
him. He's our friend. He's
Yes.
just as we are." So yes, the new generation. I do a lot of talks, Shobha, around India,
Yes.
and I'm just amazed at the younger generation. They are very accepting. This conversation is completely like they don't understand this conversation. Rural India, whether we're talking about smaller cities, they're very accepting of
So,
this.
what do you think was the problem with your generation? What were the barriers that refused to allow you to be yourself without facing abuse, criticism, discrimination at many, many levels, as you've frequently referred to and narrated?
Well, we were, I think, brought up in a very conservative manner, and we were told that a man and a woman made a family. And if you had children, then it was a man and a woman and children. So they couldn't understand that there could be a man or a woman and a woman. So that was completely, as you know, one of your tweets I read says that gay rights is equal to human rights. You wrote in 2013, and I remember the kind of trolls
Yes,
you got. People
yes.
don't understand. They think it's an illness. They think it's a disease. And that's what was told to me repeatedly.
But you're an educated working professional. So
Yeah.
surely your colleagues and your contemporaries didn't give you any of that. I hope not.
You know, there is homophobia which is up in front of you, and there's a homophobia that happens behind your back. You
Yeah.
can sense it. There's an underlying narrative that's happening. You can see the snide comments as you're walking past. There's ridicule. Some will abuse you openly. I got spat on, Shobha. I was in New Zealand, not even in
Yeah.
India.
Yes.
There was this Indian Gujarati woman who came up to me when I was with my kids who were about 4.5 years old at
Yes.
that time. She shoved me in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Kicked me in my stomach. She spat on my face. Yeah, she was quite, and she said, "You lesbian, you
Yeah.
homebreaker," and then she
Yeah.
walked away. And I didn't know how to react to that. Yes, I was educated. Yes, I'm the same person I was, but
Yes.
she didn't understand that part. For her, I had done something that she was not comfortable with. So this is something that I lived with for a long, long time.
Did words like perversity, sickness, etc. Come up then, as you've mentioned that they did? Do you also encounter that kind of hostility or open hostility even today?
Now I don't see people, like I said to you, like now people ghost.
Yeah.
When the story came out in September, the people
Yeah.
I manage celebrities, right? I'm in a business
Yes.
that works with a lot of people, and some of them just disappeared from my life. They would not respond to my WhatsApp messages, my comments to them. They just disappeared. They were uncomfortable, and I understand that.
How do you know it was for that reason that they disappeared, or is it an assumption?
It is an assumption. It's a coincidence because it could be a coincidence because that person, those people were in touch with me on a constant basis.
Yeah.
When my story appeared in Humans of Bombay, and then your story, and Barkha that did a talk with us, suddenly they just disappeared, Shobha.
Did you ever ask any of them that how come you suddenly disappeared from my
No,
life?
I haven't, because maybe I should. I feel that it's not, over the last 18 years, I've seen so much of this. So
Yes.
those who want to remain in your life, you just nurture them, nourish them. Those who don't want to remain, they're welcome to just find something else to do.
But also in the kind of work that you do, whether it's in India or in where you now live, I mean, you divide your time between both the places. How does it? Is it qualitatively different? Responses from people, not just at the workplace, but even socially. Like, would it be different in Mumbai? Would it be different in Goa? Would it be different in Delhi? Or would it be different when you go to maybe a bar or a pub in London?
It's very interesting actually, because Shobha, right now, the stage that I am in life, because I am seen in a certain manner, I see people just accept me for who I am. That's the
Yeah.
difference. So, but maybe 18 years ago, when I was in a different place, when I didn't have a place, or I was making a
Yes.
place for myself, I felt it. People came and told me. Now people don't come and say that to me anymore. But sometimes I feel, I mean, they will make loose comments like, "Oh, that's so gay," or you're like, "Oh, I wish you have not found the right man yet." They'll make
Yes.
loose comments, and they think it's funny.
Yeah.
And
You.
by then,
Yes.
it still hasn't changed.
Yeah. But you've
I'm
also mentioned that there are people who say things like, "Did you not find me attractive enough?" Now, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it, but my
Yeah.
my girlfriends, right? When I
Yeah.
came out, I didn't have to come out to many people because
Right.
over time people knew. But the ones that I spoke with, their first question to me was, and that wasn't just one, many have asked me, "Did
Yes.
you ever think of me in that way?" So they just assume that just because you are attracted to women, that you may have been attracted to them. And when you
Yeah.
tell them that actually, no, you're my friend. I mean, heterosexual relationships, I've been with a man. Every man I met, I haven't been attracted to just because I was with a man.
Yes.
Similarly, right? They
Yeah.
actually don't like it. They take offense. They say, "Oh, how come you're not attracted to me?" And the conversation goes into a different direction.
So, is it a vanity issue, or what do you reckon it is? If these are your friends, to be asking you a question which I find frankly ludicrous, what is it? Or is the relationship that superficial, that was only about attraction? Or do you think they are not confronting their own feelings in this context?
I
Maybe
don't
they're
know.
attracted to ladies too.
No, maybe that's that angle as well. But it could
Yeah.
also be that when you don't have something to say, you don't know how to react to a certain situation, you
Yeah.
react in the best manner you can. You have random conversations. I
Yeah.
think my friends and close friends who didn't know how to react to my sexuality or saying, "Oh, you're not with a man anymore, now you're with a woman."
Yeah.
This That was the only way they could react.
And
And that's
when did your realization actually come to you so powerfully, so strongly, and did it have any kind of a spiritual foundation? I don't mean spiritual as in Catholic. I mean of an awareness which is deeper.
it's
How
like I
did
said
you
that
know?
you Yeah, see, I've when I look back, this is now when I look back, I've always been attracted. Maybe I was attracted to women from a very young age, but I grew up in India, like I said, in a traditional family. So for me, just getting married to a man was the natural thing to do. This is the social conditioning we talk about. I got married to a man. I had a very, very happy marriage. When the marriage wasn't working out after many, many years of being married, and when I had to make a choice, I felt that there's nothing that I need from a man. There's nothing I can't do on my own anyway. Emotionally, I didn't feel fulfilled with a man. So for me, a personal decision, I made a personal decision that is this something that I could explore. I explored it and I haven't looked back, Shobha. So that was the only difference for me.
No, but when you say you explored it, I need to understand a little more. Was it more like you were saying, I'm open to a different experience. I'm willing to put myself out there and see where it goes. I am on an adventure, and I don't know how that adventure might pan out. Or what was it? I mean, you weren't in a happy marriage. Okay, I get it. In the sense that you weren't fulfilled in that marriage. Not that he was a bad person or
Right,
he wasn't abusing
right.
you or any of that. You were not fulfilled. You wanted something more. What that
Yep.
more was what? How did you get the courage to walk out of a marriage because you
My
wanted something more?
my
And
marriage
that
was
more was another woman.
yeah, my
Did you
marriage
first
was
fall in
over.
love, or did that happen later?
I did fall in love with a woman. I was very attracted to somebody, and
Yeah.
my marriage was over. We were my ex-husband and I were constantly talking about it, and I was very fortunate that I had a man that I had at that time.
Yes.
And I said to him that, what, I can't be married to you any longer. That was separate. But that I also told him about my choices. It wasn't an adventure for me. It was something that I felt absolutely
Yes.
inside me. I
Yes.
knew inside me that
Yeah.
at my soul level that
Yes.
I needed this. And
Yes.
sometimes in marriage you take a break, right? You say,
Yes.
let's take a break for a while. So
Yeah.
we didn't even do that. I just left the marriage. I said, this was it. Whether it is you or somebody else, it doesn't matter. This marriage is over for me. And I had committed to the person to look after the family anyway. But when
Yes.
I started thinking about what I wanted from life after that, Shobha, And
Yes.
it's organically, it just happened. When you put it out to the universe, it happens. I started hanging out with people who were like minded. I found very interesting people out there who were beyond what I had anticipated, I had expected. There were beautiful women out there. And
Yeah.
I explored that part of my sexuality. And I
Yeah.
felt that, yes, this is something that I felt comfortable with, because that was the most important thing for me, to not judge myself, because I judged myself always. It was a very difficult time.
Yeah. And this was not in India. You were by then
I was in I was in New Zealand at
in
that
New
time.
Zealand at
Yes,
the time. So do you think
yes,
it made it easier for you somehow than had you been in a familiar Indian environment which is full of,
absolutely,
people, aunts, uncles, cousins, school
Ab-
friends who are out there judging, judging, judging?
absolutely. If I wasn't in New Zealand, sometimes I wonder
Mm.
whether I would have ever been in this position. I don't know. I don't have the answers, because I
Yeah.
wasn't in India.
Yes.
It's very scary,
Yes.
because even a lot of my family knew that I was then by then I had left my marriage, that I
Yeah.
was involved with somebody. But
Yeah.
my family, even after 10 years, would ask me, "So when are you coming on a holiday with your husband and your children?"
Yeah.
And they would just basically be in denial. Till about 3 years ago, they were in denial.
But
They
was it
refused to.
that were they in denial, or were they being provocative, or were they trying to needle you or get you to say something that would satisfy their kind of curiosity or the vicarious kind of thrill about knowing, oh, how does it work with a woman and a woman?
Well, I think more simply than that. I think they were just being in denial. This is a typical Indian, I think, middle class construct, Shobha,
Yeah.
when people just don't want to know. If they're in denial, it's the most wonderful and comfortable thing to be.
And if they don't want to know, why would they ask questions like where, when? Then they would just not refer to it, right? I mean, don't you think it could be a possibility, knowing Indian society the way I do and having monitored it for so long, that sometimes the intrusive questions are to goad a response out of you? That how are you going to deal with this question? What are you going to say?
That's a possibility I never thought of. That's true. Because,
Yeah.
when Nicola and I would go to India, they would say, "Oh, this is so wonderful. You've come with your best friend."
Yes.
I had family who would say, "Oh, isn't she such a wonderful, like a sister to you?"
Yes.
Maybe that's what they were trying to do. Maybe they were trying to goad me into
Did
responding.
you never feel like saying to them that she's not my sister, she's my partner? Did you not want to do that and own up to your relationship and make Nicola feel good that she's not being passed off as a best friend and a sister?
Shobha, that is my biggest shame to date. I have to admit that I never owned up until I wrote that book, Untold Lies.
Yes,
And until I came out in September, I never owned up, because I was so scared. I was so afraid of
yes,
the abuse. I had no idea how they would react, because already my friends, my family had abandoned me. They would just refuse to talk. When you have kids in the family, you make your sister
yes,
as the godmother, or I had no such
yeah.
luxuries. I
So
was never invited.
after the book, has that changed?
Very subtly. My father's side of the family, like I said to you, I was 6 when he passed, right?
Yeah.
So my father's side of the family is exceptionally educated, and they're very,
Yes,
very, very well off.
yes,
I thought they just didn't care. They had abandoned us.
yeah.
However, they were the ones who came up, and they have shown total support since
Okay.
September. So they've gone
Yes,
publicly and said,
yes.
"We are so proud of you, Raga."
Oh,
So
that's
that's one.
wonderful, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Yes,
My mother's side of the family, we never
yes,
speak about it. My siblings never talk about it, even now, never asked me.
yeah.
But, by liking some of my posts, by, doing these things, I
Yes.
know somehow there is the
Yeah,
acceptance.
they are. Yes, it'll maybe take a little longer. But have you thought in terms of signing some kind of a pact or a deed or a treaty or formalizing your relationship with Nicola, getting married? I mean, it's now perfectly accepted.
I have been married once, and I keep thinking, do I need to marry? Bless you. Do I need to marry again?
Mhm.
Do I need to marry again? Does it matter to me? Because my relationship with Nicholas is so fulfilling and so committed. Do I need a document? We have children, we brought up kids, right? And they are in our life. So maybe one day we will do it only for legal reasons, because rights
Yes,
are important. If you have
yes,
to buy a property, you need that. If you
yes.
have to have, those for those reasons, not for any emotional reason.
What does Nicola's family feel about the
They're
choice
very
that she's made?
very accepting. There's no problem. Nicola is from New Zealand, so New
Yeah,
Zealand it's legal and it's fine. We live in
yeah,
London. London is
yeah,
legal and it's fine. So we don't
yeah.
really have an issue with that.
It's legal in India too, right?
Legal, but in what way? Legal to have sex. Like you can
No,
have,
it's. I think now it's been decriminalized, which is
decriminalized.
already a huge thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And when that happened, I think a lot of the phobias were automatically dealt with because the people who didn't have the courage to live their lives now found that freedom finally, that they didn't have to hide and they didn't have to lie. So it was a huge, big step forward. And even now, the conversations in India, I think, are quite phenomenal and
I agree.
fantastic and open. And people are discussing not just in terms of sexuality alone, but how mainstream it is and ought to be. Further pushing the
Sure,
envelope much more.
sure, sure.
So I'm sure when you come to India, you must sense that and experience it for yourself.
I do in my industry that the events, advertising, media,
Yes,
entertainment industry, very accepting.
yes,
However, I remember 3 years ago, I went to apply for a bank loan. I wanted to buy a property in India.
yeah,
There was no way I could buy a property with Nicola, for instance. There is still those kind of things will take a lot of time. I mean, I lived in
yeah,
India for a few years with my children.
yeah.
I like a school admissions. No way. There's no way I could get Nicola legally on a school admission form.
Yes, of
She was
course.
a guardian.
Yeah,
So those are things I think it will take time,
yeah,
and I believe it will happen, but it will be a long time
yeah. So
before it happens.
I was just thinking about it in the context of Wendell Rodrigues, who was a dear, dear friend, and Jerome, and
Yeah.
for exact same reasons that you've just spelt out, buying property or getting names on documents and
Yes.
papers. And I'm talking about more than 25 years ago when they decided to go ahead very boldly. And the French laws, even at that time, were not what they are today, but they recognized a pact which was a legal document, which
Right.
gave the other partner the sort of rights that otherwise, like what you're saying, are at the moment not accessible to either you or Nicola. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's hope that there's going to be that the final sort of barrier. The last leg of the war will be fought on a war footing. But as coincidentally, this afternoon I came across an interesting factoid about Shakuntala Devi, who you may
Mm.
know as the computer lady who could beat any computer. She was a mathematician and so on. And in 1977, she wrote a book about homosexuality because after she was
Yes.
married, again, a very traditional family, she discovered that her husband preferred to be with a same sex partner. And she decided to find out much, much more about it because at that stage, there was very little information out there. How do you think the information gap has been met or uh, filled in the interim? 1977 is a long way off.
Yeah, I read about her as well, and I follow her very closely because I mean, 1977, 1978, she wrote that book, and she
Yeah,
supported her husband, right, who came out
yeah,
to her and
that's
said
right.
that
Yes.
he was gay.
Yeah,
And I think stories, that's what
yeah,
a lot of us, Sherry Frangnicker, if you may know, and him and
yeah,
I, we talk about this quite a bit, and we say stories, the
yes,
stories that we share. Every person who shares a story through filmmaking, through books that you write, books that we write, I think that is the information base, I would say.
yes,
That's what the young people are listening to. That's what they're learning from. That's where they're finding their courage to come
yeah.
out. TikTok is, any platform that we have. That
So
is the information
do you
base.
think Bollywood has dealt with it in a way that is significant and sensitive, or have they sort of trivialized it to an extent that people will still look at same-sex couples and snigger?
It's transition. I mean, I've heard Karan Johar talk about his journey at We the Women during the We the
Yeah,
Women festival, and he said that initially he had to talk about homosexuality in a certain manner that the
yeah,
audience would appreciate. So he brought in fun and humor. Then
yeah,
he made it serious, and now when he makes a movie, it's more serious.
yes,
Similarly, Onir made
yes,
this film
of
I
course,
Am and My Brother Nikhil. I mean,
yeah,
look at the sensitivity with which he handled the subjects. To
yeah,
me, slowly the narrative is changing, and films. play a huge role. And in fact, I asked Onir a few days ago that how would he deal with a subject like mine?
Yeah.
And he said it's with the utmost sensitivity that it deserves, because that is how things change, right?
Yes, because there is a film that, well, because of the lockdown, it has not found a commercial release, but it sounds extremely interesting. And it features Divya Datta. I think it's called Sheer Kaba or Sheer Korma, if I'm
Shir Korma, Shir Korma.
not. And it has Shabana playing an older person, the mother of one of the ladies. To think that so many years ago, Shabana's film with Nandita Das, Water, was
Fire, fire, fire.
Fire. Yeah, there was Fire. Water was with Lisa Ray. Fire
Yes.
was actually banned in India. And today it's like Shabana has come full circle with this movie. So it'll be very interesting to see the response. And I'm sure it's been dealt with extremely well.
Yeah,
Even
I'm
the
sure.
yeah. So
I think the
popular
new
culture does play a very huge role. And
huge role.
yes, so have you in what way have you tried to push popular culture in more acceptance and in dealing with homophobia?
See, I speak about my story wherever possible. I get
Yeah,
invited. That's one way. My
yeah,
story, in fact, Shobha, has been bought by a filmmaker, and it's in the
wonderful.
process of, yeah. So that itself, yeah. So I've kind
Yeah,
of created a love story out of it, and
yeah,
someone has bought the rights for it, and that's
yeah.
in the process. I'm writing another book which is short love stories, and these are love stories that are regular people who are but from a same-sex relationship, and these stories, I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
And just these conversations like I'm having with you, so
That's
important, right? That's
very,
important.
very
These are
important. I mean, the more we speak about issues, but the one term I wanted to ask you about, and then maybe we can open it up to questions.
sure, sure.
You talked about homophobia, yes, and you talked about biphobia. Now, what do you want to just explain what that means? Because even I'm unclear about what exactly it means.
Sure. So a biphobia is a bisexual person who is basically likes both men and women. And a lot of young people have come up to me these days and said, I'm bisexual and my parents don't approve.
Yes,
And so that is, so why should anybody have a problem with it? So there is a biphobia as well,
yeah,
that parents or your family or your friends or society don't approve
mm,
of your sexual orientation, and maybe you like both sexes, and that's
mm,
okay. But I personally think it's all about us labeling ourselves, putting ourselves in our own boxes,
yes,
and then telling the world, okay, come and judge us. I keep telling myself now that I have gone through this whole experience that don't judge yourself, because
mm.
when you stop judging yourself, the whole world will stop judging you.
And is that the message you want to leave for today,
Yeah,
on this very
absolutely.
important day?
My message, Shobha, even I didn't expect this conversation to be about me. I was thinking
Yeah.
we'll have a conversation with thank you. My message was is to be just to live your truth. It's very hard to live your truth. Now you
Yes,
may not speak about your truth. That's
yes,
okay. But then
yeah,
you should have the freedom to
yes,
choose to live your truth. And
absolutely.
that's freedom I did have. And now that I found that freedom, it's so liberating. People like you, and I love you for what you're doing today, and to all my friends and family who just then accept it. They may struggle with it, but they accept you for who you are.
Yes. It's important to personalize this because one can keep talking about laws and phobias and get academic and refer to books and volumes and history and how, that sort of uh, I hate that kind of approach where they say, oh, but my best friends are gay, which is so out of touch with anything. It's so uncool to even say it. So I wanted it to be personalized only because, and thank you for sharing your life. It's important for people to understand what a, what your choices have actually meant to you and what your journey has been, rather than this being an academic conversation. I'm not an academic or an authority on the subject. I was very happy to talk to you because it's important for us to be having this conversation, and to all the people who are listening in, I'm sure they've gone away much richer for it. So
Thank
take a few questions,
I
Raga.
will. I will. I just want to say that, Nicola and I have brought up two kids, and they were about 8 years old when she came into our life.
Yes,
They're 22 now.
yes,
They're just normal kids. People ask me a lot. They say, though, oh, are your kids like different? Or how do your kids think about it? They're just functional or dysfunctional like any
anybody
other
else. Yes,
anybody else. They've just been brought up by two parents who
Yeah.
love each other, and there's a lot of love in our life, and they have a father in their life who
Yeah.
loves them as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these questions, I find them ridiculous, and I think that narrative will change at some point.
Well,
Okay,
it will take a while to for that to change. I see it happening maybe over the next 5 years. But I see again in urban India and perhaps even more so outside in the smaller tier two cities, which have been far more progressive. For a film like the Ayushman Khurrana film to be made, it's about a small town, and two men who love each other decide to get married and get their very conservative Brahminical families to accept already shows the revolution is well underway. So here's to all the people out there who are a part of this change.
Shobha, I have Goan neighbors who are from Goa. Uncle is 90, auntie is 88, and they absolutely accept Nicola and I. To me,
Yeah.
that is the biggest win, you
Yes.
know? And so there's lots and lots and lots of comments.
Yes. Coming in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh my
All
God.
right.
So, like, where do I start? I mean, most of them are saying amazing story. How old are they? 22, I said. Shobha Day, totally impressed. Neelam Kumar says, totally impressed by how much info you gather about your subject before you interview him or her.
I'm
Raga rocks.
professional. I can't do anything less than that.
And you're beautiful. Raga rocks, but never got a chance to thank you about how you acknowledged my writing publicly when you came for the launch of Healed. Thank you, she says. Jitendra Kumar says, only few younger generation are accepting the ridicule from back.
Yeah.
Brave, somebody says brave. Thank you, Bhakti. Shobha Pille Coutinho says, yes, it will be an assumption. Work-wise, none can disappear. You're supreme with work. Nicole and Raga keep soaring. Raga, the rubbish, I don't know. Bold decision. How did you break it with children? Somebody's asking. Should I answer that?
Yes, of course you must. I'm deeply interested too. Did you sit them down and say, listen, this is what I have to share with you? Was Nicola present? Yes, please do tell us.
No, this is going back when the kids were 4.5, 5 years old. I'd
Yes.
already separated from their father. So the first thing was about breaking the news that I wasn't going to be with their father anymore. So that was a story in itself, and that was an experience in itself. So that's what they had to first go through. And a few months later, when I made the choice, it didn't happen overnight, like I said.
Yeah.
I sat with them. I didn't have to really sit with them. They just kind of saw their mother into this
Mm.
different transitionary life, and they were so accepting. Children are so accepting. Children
Yes.
don't judge. They
Yeah.
are very open. We judge. Children
Yes.
don't judge. They were so accepting. Yes, of course, over time, for them it's the most actually, I think it's the most natural thing to have two moms and a dad. They just don't understand the why I feel so strongly about this, because that's what they've been brought up. In fact, I think our house has the most number of people ever, because they're always, all their friends are here excited
Yeah.
that Anna and Ash have two moms, and they get the best
Yeah.
food, the best conversation. Yeah.
That's
So
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm just thinking, what else? And then refreshing to hear you talk. Somebody says, thank you. Manoj Gurshani says, legal in India, but not worth it. It's Madhu Ranjit Singh says, it's legal in India, but not worth it. It's only to show that it's in reality, it's still not acceptable.
Well, I think it's already a huge, big step forward that it's been decriminalized, and that frees a lot of people from the fear of arrest. And it will take a while for society to radically shift, but it's happening, and I feel very optimistic.
And she also asked, can people be allowed to live their own lives ever, be it homosexual, bisexual, or whatever?
Well, it depends on the courage levels that you have within yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing can stop a person who believes deeply enough to do what they need to do when they need to do it. Nothing and nobody can stop that.
Zora Sayed says it's indeed very important to have the right kind of representation in media of the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's where I think it's getting better more and more. I
No,
mean, there are
there's no question. I'm
yeah,
very
yeah,
optimistic.
yeah. I mean,
And my dear, it's dinner time in India, so
okay,
I'd
yeah,
love
it
to
is.
leave you. It
Thank
was
you,
fantastic, and I'm glad we had this conversation. And
thank,
good luck to you, and to
thank you,
Nicola, and to the babies, and to your ex-husband.
thank
From
you
me,
very much. Thank you very much. Love you. Thank you for this. I really
sure.
appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who are watching us. See you soon. Totally out now. Thank you, Shubha.